Bonus, bitches.
We're doing your thing. This is a beloved director. We're ranking him.
Quentin Tarantino, man. A couple months ago, me and you had a discussion about we need more bonus content for our show. A couple weeks ago, I texted you and said, why don't we rank a director from worst to best? You said Tarantino, and I said, okay. That's a great idea. We have talked about Tarantino on the podcast before. We did Reservoir Dogs a couple months ago. But today, we thought it'd be fun just to rank every movie worst to best. Guess I should explain the rules.
Okay.
We kind of did this off the air a second ago, and we were having a little bit of a brain fart. Austin, you have seen 7. I've seen all 9 as of last night. So the rules of this list will go as follows. I will announce what movie I have at a specific number. You'll tell me what yours is, and we will talk about yours at that specific spot.
Okay. We'll talk about my list as it pertains in that ranking order, and we'll go through that specific film that I have on that number, and you will also say what you have, and maybe you'll give a little bit of insight of it's ranked higher or it's ranked lower for this reason. So
the ones that you haven't seen, I'll just briefly go through, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like that's all we really need to get through.
Let's do it. Take the charge, because I haven't seen 2 of his films.
Okay, so at number 9 is the most recent movie I've seen by him, and it is the film Death Proof. I watched this last night, and it is the only film in Tarantino's discography that I can say I actively dislike. I did not like this movie. It's got overindulgent dialogue that doesn't match up to like the standards of his other films. Paper thin characters where the first hour of the movie we focus on a group of girls and they're killed off, and then the movie restarts basically and we're introduced to a new set of main characters to where it becomes very tedious for this reason. I will say Kurt Russell is in this film and he is fantastic as Stuntman Mike. The film is kind of a slasher grindhouse movie.
I know it says Grindhouse Presents. That's actually the title of the film, Grindhouse Presents Death Proof.
It's because it was done as a double feature where they did this like gimmicky. Tarantino had Death Proof, and then it was also paired up with Robert Rodriguez's film Planet Terror, and they played as a double feature in theaters. I think the film fails because it doesn't commit to the grindhouse genre. It's kind of trying to be an artsy Tarantino movie and a grindhouse movie, but it's not committing to either of them. So it's a half-assed version of both of these things. The last 20 minutes does have a great car chase scene with practical effects. And
I know this movie was super dangerous to film.
Yes. There's not much to say about it. It was boring and uninteresting for a majority of the runtime, which is weird to say about a Tarantino film.
Not to mention intense car stunts. I mean, it's really got to be piss poor at certain points in the film for it not to work in that aspect.
Yeah, it's because the car stuff is about 10% of the movie, and the rest is boring people at the bar.
And the other film that I have not seen.
My number 8 is actually not the film that you haven't seen. I'm going to go ahead and say that my number 8 is The Hateful Eight, but we will talk about that when it comes to your list.
Okay.
We will move into number 7, which I have Jackie Brown. What do you have?
I have The Hateful Eight.
We are relatively close when it comes to that. Why do you have The Hateful Eight at the bottom of your list?
I've only seen it once, and I think that's enough. The film is way too fucking long.
This is true.
Tarantino's as we move through the rest of his filmography, I think one thing that really works for him is that he does take pretty decent chances and kind of tackles other genres like spaghetti western, which I think this movie was somewhat influenced by, but it ends up being like slow drama, maybe influenced by The Thing in some way.
Many similarities between this and that movie.
What I hate the most about it is the runtime and the payoff. It kind of felt like the vast majority of the film was like leading up to like some big climactic ending that like you get, like never really feels that good at the end of it. You're like kind of tired by it. A comparison I want to draw is that I recently got around to watching Akira Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai, and I had to break that film up. And it was like, you know, it was very lengthy, and it had its charm, and that's what kept me in the film was the charm. I mean, the dialogue was very monotonous and slow, and it was of the times. And there were times in the film where I wanted to fucking go to bed. I was exhausted, you know. The pace of that film really slows your brain down, and you just get in this wavelength of kind of walking through quicksand, and you're a little wore out, and that's fine. This movie is that like 80% of the runtime, and it's kind of difficult to get through. And there were like some great performances, don't get me wrong, but I think it's his most out of touch compared to like the rest of his filmography that I've seen, and I get really frustrated by that. I do want to preface that when a film comes out, critical and audience scores matter. And if you don't get ahead of the curve and you don't watch the film on opening weekend before a bunch of reviews come out, that might sway your opinion prior to watching a film. And I had watched this film on the heels of knowing that it was already kind of mid. And that definitely affected my viewing experience. But when I think about the film, there were like a few key moments that I love. Other than that, I don't really give two shits about it. It was one of the first Tarantino films, like maybe have its own score. It's beautiful, like it's a beautifully shot film, but I am not.
When it goes outside of the cabin.
Correct. But like other than that, it's claustrophobic and it wears you out. It's slow.
I'll add on to that by saying, I think the first two acts of this movie are actually very interesting. The mystery is good, and I think the dialogue is among the best that Tarantino has written. And I love the dynamic between these characters. But the reveal of who the bad guy is, where it's basically just everybody's the bad guy except for like two people, it feels like you wasted like 2 hours of your life. This is one
3
of his,
hours of your life.
It's about 2 hours and 45 minutes, I think. This movie is too overindulgent. It's not one I want to return to.
It would be a chore. That's unfortunate because the reputation that the film has, it's really hard to put in that effort to want to even put it on. You know what I mean? And yeah, it is self-indulgent. And I think after that, I think Tarantino had to think this was a moment in his career where he was kind of like, oh, that was a little bit of a miss, man.
Yeah, this is like the only other miss he has besides Death Proof, in my opinion.
I don't want you to skip over Jackie Brown too much.
I did this on accident, actually. It should be said that we're recording this as a second podcast of the night, and I'm on beer 3 right now. Jackie Brown, you have not seen this movie. I think Jackie Brown is a good film. I think it's a little bit uncharacteristic of Tarantino because it's one of his more slow-moving and mature movies where it's pretty much just a straight-up crime thriller. The cast is great. You got Pam Grier and Robert Forster, a.k.a. Breaking Bad vacuum guy, in the lead, which is weird. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't have a whole lot of Tarantino regulars. Robert De Niro, Michael Keaton, Samuel L. Jackson plays a great bad guy in this movie. I think the reason I have it so low on my list is because the third act is really convoluted, where you see the same scene 5 times through the perspectives of different characters, but the situation isn't interesting enough to warrant seeing it 5 different times.
That would work maybe if it was 2 perspectives of a scene.
Yeah.
But that does sound a little too much.
I mean, the dialogue is great throughout the movie. Pam Grier and Robert Forster's chemistry is good. It's just the plot is one of the least interesting that he's done. And it's the only film that he's adapted a novel for the screen. It's the only time that he hasn't done an original story. So that's why it's at number 7 on my list. Would you like to move into number 6?
Yeah, that's fine.
At number 6, I have Reservoir Dogs.
Wow.
I know, this was tough. I think it should be said that once we get closer to number 1, like most of these movies are like 8s or above for me. What do you have at number 6?
This might be a hot take.
Ooh, okay.
I have number 6 as Pulp Fiction.
Oh, wow. Why do you have Pulp Fiction so low?
There were things about this film that I don't like, actually. And I'll draw comparisons real fast, but I think what works for a specific movie, being Inglourious Bastards, is that they're like vignettes. And it's surrounding a central theme and period of time. It's in direct reference culturally to like Nazi Germany and the Holocaust. And I find that vignette much more compelling. This film obviously was the film that basically set up Tarantino for the epic run that he has after, which is great, and I appreciate that. But I really have no desire to ever watch this film again. And I think this movie's really good the first 2 times. I haven't seen this movie in a few years, and then the last time I watched it was with Elizabeth. You know, and I don't think she had much to say about it either. The things that work for me in this film are great, and I'm not saying this film is bad by any means, but in reference to the other films on the list, I enjoy it the least. It's not to say it's bad. Say what one more time, motherfucker, I dare ya. Samuel L. Jackson, it revived Travolta's career. Uma Thurman gives a great performance. This movie broke me as a child. I mean, like, when I saw it, I've talked about it before, but, like, I couldn't understand why the cop was the bad guy.
You've told me about this before.
And it fucked me up, you know, as a kid. You know, you look to these symbols of good, and, you know, and that messed me up. And not to say it fucking sticks with me, man. I can't watch this movie. But, like, when that does have a lasting impact on me, but something about the film, it feels really disconnected compared to the rest of his films to me. It kind of feels like nothing characters with a nothing plot, but it's kind of interesting because of like the way the dialogue is written, and it's for some reason we're like around a briefcase, the MacGuffin. There's this thing.
This is true.
And for those reasons, I have it low. Not to say it's bad, but it's coming off the heels of Reservoir Dogs. And it, you know, bigger budget, better actors. It helped him propel. But I think when you strip it down compared to the rest of his body of work, it just seems the least focused. And it feels very of the times. Not to say it's not good, but I just don't love it as much as the rest.
Okay, I completely understand that, actually. Everything you said technically isn't wrong.
I'm a narcissist. Feed me, goddammit.
I have this one much higher on my list. A lot of the reasons that you listed are some of the reasons why I like the movie so much. The first time I watched it, I thought it was very overrated, especially considering this is probably Tarantino's most iconic movie.
Most iconic poster. You know what I mean?
Like the dancing scene between Uma Thurman and Travolta is so iconic. I think that there's not a whole lot of tension because of the movie's non-chronological order, but I think it has many iconic dialogue lines, interesting situations.
I completely agree with you in that regard.
The Royale with cheese shit, Tim Roth robbing the diner where it's like it's only at the beginning and the end of the movie. Like it's very weird. It's an experimental screenplay, like for sure. It's kind of hard to state what makes the movie great. I don't know why that is, but on the rewatches that I've had, I've appreciated it so much more. It may be super underwhelming, especially with like today's standards, but I think it's a great example of the pulpy blaxploitation shit that Tarantino does really well. I don't know, that's all I really have to say about it. It's kind of hard to state the case for this one. I get why people wouldn't like it as much.
I think the dialogue is among the best. We've known this and we've talked about it many times, but it's definitely his strong suit. This is what happens when you give an indie director that budget. We kind of had, I don't know if it's a great comparison, but we had that moment earlier this year in April when we went and saw The Northman. We gave a great indie director, a small budget director, a big fucking budget. I'm glad to hear that film actually made its money back.
I was surprised by that.
It deserves it. It's a fucking great movie. It's fucking amazing. Like The Northman.
I love The Northman.
It was an experience, and I'm glad I got to experience it with my homies. Like, I got to see it with me, you, my brother, my future brother-in-law. It was fucking amazing. That definitely elevated the experience, but I think we all walked out of that theater feeling like this immense sense of panic and heightened, adrenaline. And we were like, holy shit. We didn't know what to say when we left. I mean, it was just like, holy shit. We all had to, like, ride that wave on the way home. This is that moment for Tarantino in his filmography, and it gains him the level of trust that he'll earn and he'll exploit later on.
This movie helped many other movies be made, and you made this case on our Boogie Nights podcast, where a film like that wouldn't be made without Pulp Fiction. And I just love the weird happenstance of the movie, where everything that happens in it is like coincidence.
You said that, and I immediately think of the diner or the donut shop scene in Boogie Nights. I mean, that
exactly.
I think I probably said it on that episode, but it's that Pulp Fiction moment. It feels so what if, happenstance.
Butch pulling up to the stoplight and Marcellus Wallace is just there.
Paul Thomas even credits the Boogie Nights being greenlit because of the success of Pulp Fiction, which is great.
Yeah.
But I think in the filmography, it might be a little overhyped for me. And I know it sits at the top of many lists. And that does give it credit, but the way I view my list is from my pure enjoyment of a film from start to finish. And I appreciate everything that Pulp Fiction does. But for me, it's not something that I view as a front to back finish as something I want to like introduce like Tarantino to people. I have my introduction Tarantino film, and it sits very high.
I know what that is.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you know, and I know you're number one. God damn it! Wait, I know it.
Oh, do you know my number one?
If it's not, I'm gonna fucking kill you with this pen in my hand. But like,
okay, we'll get there when we get there. Then
you're about to witness murder live on the mic. Number 5. Let's just hop in.
All right, at number 5, here's my hot take of the podcast, which you'll be upset with me. Django Unchained.
Fuck you, first off. First and foremost, fuck you, Kanye.
What do you have at number 5?
I have Kill Bill.
Kill Bill. Okay.
Volume 1 and 2 were making them one. The film is supposed to be released as one film. Fucking Harvey said no. Poor Harvey Weinstein.
I think this might be one of Tarantino's most fun movies.
Yeah.
It's also one of his most experimental.
Oh my God. When you say that, I immediately images of the Beatrix and Copperhead, I believe her name is, and her code name, basically in the middle of the living room,
Oh my God.
the staring eyeball to eyeball, like it's just so out there. This is Tarantino's homage to like almost like Bruce Lee Kung Fu era films, which is how Tarantino has tackled a lot of his filmography, which is, you know, homage and love letters to specific genres and directors. And
he elevates them to a new level for like modern audiences.
Sometimes that comes across as parody. Sometimes it comes across as reinventing the wheel, which is great. But I have it kind of sitting near the middle of my list because I love it, but it's got some serious problems. I think part of that is that the film moves in a way. Let me preface that I'm treating the film as one. And if you start it from volume 1 to the end of volume 2, that's how I'm viewing it.
The order's wrong, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the way the film's edited. It does set up a lot of mystery, and it's great. But the payoff by the end of volume 2 doesn't really feel that great. And I think that the best parts about the film are what happens in between. Like the final confrontation with Bill, it's great. And we've sat down and watched volume 1 together, I believe.
I've seen volume 1 so many times.
The movie kind of feels hollow at times. Like, especially in volume 2, I really think the film kind of feels like there's no one living in this world.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
A lot of murder going on with like no police interference or anything. It's very heightened reality type shit. It's weird that you don't see Bill till volume 2. And then volume 1 is all about these like henchmen, like these like kind of like fake out villains in a way.
I think volume 1 does a great job. That first, it's essentially like, God, I hate that the movie's separated in the way it's edited. But yeah, she cuts the bitch's head off, cuts her scalp off in the middle of the snow, and it's a great ending to that first film. But it's kind of weird.
It feels like nothing's been accomplished yet.
Yeah. And then in volume 2, it does pick up and it's fine. Volume 2, God, I kind of don't like it. I mean, I love the sequence of like snatching the eyeball out and all that stuff, but killing Bill's brother, all that shit just feels so slow.
Yeah.
It's so weird because it's riding the wave of the last film and you kind of just hop into it. It's very bizarre.
You know, I'm one of the few people that prefers volume 2 over the first one.
Oh, I am too. No. I am too. But
it's very weird to rate like the both of them.
Having them together, it kind of shows the detriments of the film in a way. Don't get me wrong, it would be really cool to live in when it came out and like go see volume 1 in theaters and then see volume 2 in theaters. But then I'm thinking, after watching volume 1 and not knowing how the outcome of volume 2, I don't know that I'd be that interested in seeing volume 2.
I get that. Volume 1 is missing, for one, Bill, the main fucking motivation for this movie. Volume 1 misses a lot of... You don't get invested in our main character's drive to do this. I think all the wedding murder stuff is in Volume 2. Bill's in Volume 2.
Yeah, you get to see that. I think the Volume 2 opens up with the wedding murder from front to back, and then Volume 1 opens up with just her on the ground getting a bullet in the head.
The non-chronological ordering of this film, I think, actually hurts it.
One thing I love about Volume 2 is for the first 40 minutes to an hour, it rides that wave of Volume 1. like full throttle action, and that last 40 minutes is just dialogue with Bill. And that's fucking great. That's the
shit I like.
That pace takes a complete halt, and there's like this level of anxiety and tension throughout all these what should be comforting moments, inside this home. That shit's great. But I think the fact that the film's cut into 2 volumes hurts it in a way, and I love it, and I love it front to back both times. But it's really gimmicky at times, and in a way, it kind of feels disrespectful. And it's like
what, to like the style it's paying homage to?
Yeah, I do think, unfortunately, like time hasn't been too great to this film. I think in 2012 you would view this film a lot different than you would today. And I'm not trying to say that like in some sort of like PC culture, but I just think it's starting to age a little poorly. My opinion is subject to change. This might be my number 1 in 10 years, but for right now, I do think it's kind of somewhere in the middle. It's really, really fun though, and that's enough for me.
I do enjoy the mix of genres that we get here, where there's like a random anime passage in the first one, and yeah, it's so weird. It's hard to rate it because of how weird it is.
The camera styles change multiple times. Like, yeah, talking about the anime, and there are like long tracking shots, and there are quick cuts, scenes where you're stuck on one frame, the camera's still, and 5 minutes will pass. It's just, there's a lot. It's all over the place. It's probably at the height of like fucking cocaine Tarantino as well. So
most likely,
so
yes.
I don't know.
Okay, so at number 4, I have Kill Bill. What do you got right there?
Reservoir Dogs. Did we just flip?
Kinda. I had Reservoir Dogs at number 6.
Oh, that's right.
I like this movie a whole lot, actually.
I do too. I think echoing back to Pulp Fiction, and I think this movie is really focused. And I think that's why I like it a lot more. It just feels it's playing in the pocket a lot more. It's less experimental. And don't get me wrong for the time, but that's, we're looking on 30 years plus after the fact mentality. So, I mean, more films got made. The culture around screenplays change, and you were able to break out of the box a little bit more. But this film, it kind of feels a little bit more straight shooter, cut and dry. It's not too big of a chance as far as like setup goes. You have a job, and it's a job gone wrong setup, and that's it, and you move on from there.
It's definitely like the least indulgent Tarantino movie there is.
Obviously, being the first Tarantino film,
yeah,
it does that.
He had to reel it back a little bit. I think there are weird elements about the movie. It's a heist movie without the heist, and the end is kind of the beginning, and then all the exposition is thrown at you at the end. And that's something that I don't know if we like really worded it that way when we did it for the podcast, but it's one of the biggest things that I appreciate about it. Very small scale, almost like a stage play at times.
That's a good way to put it. It's kind of always in this one room, it feels like.
Yeah, very loose. I love Harvey Keitel and Tim Roth and Michael Madsen, Steve Buscemi. Like, they're all on top of their game in this movie. It's just a very simple movie. It felt wrong to rate it at number 6 like I did. I think it's more that it's not as high concept as his best stuff, but I appreciate this movie a ton.
Just kind of since we're nearing the front, how are you ranking this? What is like your primary emotion or central theme? Like, why are things rated the way they are for you? Is there like something that keeps stuff up front and stuff at the back that are like highly contrasted? Because I know what mine is.
It's a little bit of everything, but with my personal enjoyment being the defining factor for most of these. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I just like to look at how well everything comes together in the end.
Yeah.
Where I would rank Kill Bill above this is because Kill Bill is like ambitious, or more ambitious, I should say. I guess that's like the best way I could describe it. Yeah, it's just my enjoyment and a little bit of like appreciation of filmmaking, screenwriting, that kind of stuff.
I think purely what mine is, for the most part, is a little bit of commercial appeal. I think that's what it is. I just know for me, and I know we know each other's favorites, but I think what's been working the best for me going through the list is, I don't know, the attention span of like getting maybe somebody that's never ventured into Tarantino, or something that I don't think will be super challenging, but will like showcase the best elements of Tarantino.
Yeah.
Which is like quippy and fun dialogue, serious dialogue, where you're echoing into the best dramas that have ever been written. It could be taken out of that playbook, but you're also like shooting guys fucking nuts, and like that's great. That's kind of where I'm shooting from, because I think what my favorites are the ones that have those Tarantino signatures and are pretty much flawless in my book, front to back. That's kind of where I'm looking from.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure. I was curious because I know how much you love dialogue. I know how much you appreciate small technicals and little things.
That's where it's weird that this is ranked below like Kill Bill, where like dialogue is not the emphasis in that movie. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, I mean, this movie has some of my favorite Tarantino scenes. The diner scene with the tipping conversation, mm-hmm. Michael Madsen torturing a cop while listening to Stuck in the Middle with You.
It played so loud in my head.
Like, he had it from the beginning. The fact that it's like a small amateur style movie pushes it back in the list for me a little bit.
That's fair. I was just curious to know where you're shooting from. Number 3.
I have Pulp Fiction at number 3.
Okay. I have Inglourious Bastards at number 3.
Okay.
Inglourious Bastards. God, what to say? I saw this movie for the first time back in November of last year, so it's coming up on a year now. I've only ever seen it once, and I'm gonna call back to my favorite parts of Tarantino. What really makes this film shine is its ability to be extremely serious in one moment. 20 minutes, 15 minutes later, or another scene, be able to step into a scene and you have dumb dialogue, parody, little things like that. Like the way this film opens is harrowing. It is one of the most bleak and terrorizing openings to any of his films.
I think the opening scene of this movie is among the best opening scenes in film, period.
When I watch the opening of this film, I think of the heart-wrenching story of like The Pianist, or fitting into like Nazi Germany or Holocaust, like Schindler's List, which I've never seen. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to comment too much on it, but like knowing that it could fit easily into a dramatic film that has no comedy whatsoever. It's front to back, serious, sad, pressing, somewhat hopeful. I mean, you know, it's a terrible human tale of the Holocaust. And then in this film, guys get shot in the dick. You know what I mean? It's really fucking good. It's smart, and that's why I love it so much. Because Tarantino's at his height of like dialogue. He knows what he's doing. Set pieces are more expensive. Better actors. I mean, Brad Pitt's in this film, and then Christoph Waltz does an amazing performance in this film.
And an Oscar-winning performance.
Yep, and he deserves it. I think he's like criminally underrated, even in my own book. I mean, he's a dude that when he's in a film, I'm teeming with joy.
He commands the screen. Mm-hmm. He was actually a soap opera actor that Tarantino just so happened to find. And he only got the role because he spoke all 3 of the languages that were required to do this part. Because this is like a multiple language movie.
Yep.
Where
subtitles,
long sections of French and German only, which I think is very commendable. This is one of the only Tarantino movies I can remember, aside from Kill Bill, that are divided into like chapters, where like that's used with a thematic purpose.
What's weird is I do think there's a few moments in the film where the chapter format kind of sets it back a few times, like specifically the what's his name, Mike Myers. That chapter was kind of bizarre.
Yeah, it's like a bit part though.
Yeah, correct. Kind of removed from like some of the longer pieces in the film. Don't get me wrong, not all chapter books are written to the same length, but it's like a weird scene where it's a little bit more quippy than I would have hoped.
Like concerning the subject matter.
Yeah. Speaking of subject matter, that's why I love it so much. It's so focused. There isn't a moment in the film where I feel like I'm drawn out. You know, it is so in tune with the time that it's trying to emulate. And it's fun working through a scene not knowing if it's going to be parody or serious. That's the fun part, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it straddles the line perfectly. I do think that the dialogue in this movie is among the most overindulgent that he's done.
Buongiorno.
Yes. But I think he earns that overindulgence with the story. The story is really fucking good, especially with like the split perspective of Brad Pitt and the Bastards. And then you have Shoshana, who runs the movie theater. We have one of, if not the best Tarantino villain with Christoph Waltz. Some of his most standout scenes, we already mentioned the opening scene of the movie, the bar scene in the basement where like he's given away by giving the wrong hand signal.
What are those called? I think it's beer house or something. I cannot remember what it's called, but it's when like the kegs of like in the cellar, like when you can pour beer. It's like when a bar is in a basement. I cannot remember what those are called. I just found out what those were called. Anyway,
A speakeasy?
Something like that. But it's a German invention. It's a German establishment.
okay.
where in the cellar is where the basement's at. Because that's where the kegs are. That's where all the beer is stored, and that's where they're served. I cannot remember what it's called, but that's where that comes from. And that's a fucking perfect scene, front to back.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned with like these crossing over of the movie theater and the Bastards and like Christoph Waltz, he plays in between both of them.
Yeah.
There is that good crossover of like these characters mingling, a little bit of happenstance, the fact that the Bastards show up to the theater of Shoshana
The same night that she's going to burn it down.
and I think that's all perfect. And I think when you take a step back and you like maybe say something like that's maybe a little bit more imperfect in my book of like Pulp Fiction, like working on like these happenstance moments, it just feels a little less focused for that reason. And I think in Inglourious Bastards, it's extremely effortless. The ability to pull these characters together into one scene,
Which is weird because the Bastards and Shoshana never meet
Correct.
in the movie.
But for some reason, you don't think about that when you're watching the film. You just know that all these characters are in this one room, and it feels right. And that's really important. And I think my biggest problem with Pulp Fiction is it kind of feels like we're discovering why these characters are there as the characters are discovering why they're there.
There's not a whole lot of like emotional attachment in that movie. In this movie, I think there's a lot more. I think there's a greater use of tension. The entire final third act of this film, I think, is perfect, where it's nonstop shit happening for like 40 minutes, and it never becomes uninteresting for a single moment.
The end of the film, I think, is damn near perfect. I mean, Christoph Waltz tries to get away, and he does, but he must bear the scar of being a Nazi for the rest of his life. He kind of becomes the foe turned friend, or like he's like becomes an anti-hero by the end.
And he's saving his own ass.
Correct. Makes a compelling argument. He would have won me over in that situation. But I think the film has a somewhat unfulfilling ending for many characters, and I think it works really well.
I do think this movie has my favorite final few seconds where Brad Pitt brands Christoph Waltz's character, and then he looks at the camera and says, "This one just might be my masterpiece." And I think that's like Tarantino speaking to the audience, where I think he thinks very highly of himself for making this movie. And I agree.
I didn't even think of it in that context.
Really?
Damn. I kind of forgot about that.
I think this is his best made movie. I think I've told you that before. I think it's his best movie. Not my favorite, but his best.
Speaking of favorites, we're getting there. Number 2.
Okay, you might be shocked, but at number 2, I have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I also have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at number 2.
Okay, the first time we've matched up on this list.
We're in sync now, boy. With age, every time I watch this film, I love it a little bit more. I think you love it a lot more than I do, but I think I appreciate this film enough to put it at number 2.
Okay.
I think having Leo and Brad Pitt in the same film in this context is maybe something that we'll never see ever again. I mean, these are like top 5 dogs of Hollywood. I mean, we have like Bale, Pitt, DiCaprio. I can't think of a handful
Tom Cruise,
more.
probably.
Yeah, Tom Cruise. I mean, they're of the era where they lived through maybe like the pinnacle of our modern day Hollywood fame. And seeing these two kind of in what I would consider maybe like an indie screenplay, like something that's not very commercially advertisable.
I completely agree.
The film is loosely based around Manson era in the Manson slaughters. Not loosely, it is, but it's not the forefront.
Yeah, the film spends a majority of its time not focusing on that subject matter.
And I know the film is saying, what if these characters were there to stop this horrific tragedy from happening?
Much like Inglourious Bastards, it's alternate history.
It really shines. I mean, those two films are, I think, the most fun. Maybe Inglourious Bastards more than Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but like it's extremely dramatic at times. Less so with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because it's a lot more character focused and an inward struggle of characters rather than like an event.
Story is incredibly loose on this one. That's might be why it doesn't have a great reputation among many people. I think this would rank near the bottom for many people.
That kind of blows my mind, but we're both like self-serving pieces of shit. So, I mean, I love like this Kurt Russell overdubbing of like introduction, two friends. The only way to say goodbye is by a good old-fashioned drunk. And I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, man. It is the only way to say goodbye to like a friend. There was a lot in the movie that is extremely self-serving for Tarantino.
Yeah, it's just him professing his love for Hollywood. Aimless ass story structure. There's not a first and second act. I don't think. I mean, would you agree? Like, I don't really think there's.
I don't view the film as acts. I view it as just like a moment. It feels so. You're just taking a step, one foot after the other, and you somehow end up to burning a bitch in a pool and breaking a nose over a mantelpiece.
I remember the first time I watched this when it came out, I was like 2 hours in and I'm thinking, where is this going? Like, I have no idea what the story is even. And I'm like 2/3 of the way through.
I'm like scrunching my nose over here because I'm thinking of the first time I watched the film.
Oh, yeah?
It was me and my brother. We watched the film, and I think he was on like Christmas break or something for like one of his first years of college. And my dad was doing a puzzle in the dining room on like basically the other side of the bottom floor of our house. Like, and you can see the TV from the dining room, but it's a very limited view. My dad didn't watch the film with us, but he walked in at the very end. And we were all just like, ooh, like, oh, shit, I can't believe we're watching this bitch get her fucking brain smashed. And I think that what the film does the best is that it does have like a lot of loose kind of nothing scenes that are really indulgent to the characters in the film. And at the end, you just cap it off with beautiful violence that you're cheering for because you would have wanted this to happen to these people.
Yes.
And that's what's fucking great about it. It's kind of bizarre because the whole film can kind of be viewed as like this character drama, and then you're kind of tacking that on at the end. I think it could kind of shy people away, but I think the performances are so well done throughout the runtime of the film that it kind of just works.
It just works for some weird reason.
I'd be curious to know, because I know we're kind of on the same wavelength for this, but I don't know what the detriments of this film are. I mean, because there are some really great scenes. I mean, from the beginning of the film to the end, I mean, you have like the fun, self-serving, indulgent, like we're going to parody Bruce Lee. We're going to show you what it's like to be on set during a filming of like a spaghetti western TV show of an alcoholic that doesn't know how to like behave or like wrestle with his own thoughts. Line! Like,
and these moments are given so much time to breathe. And you said you can't think of what the detriments of the movie are. It's just that nobody or many people won't see the point. Why should we care?
And I think maybe the humor might save a lot of this film.
This is Tarantino's most blatant comedy movie.
But when I think about slow to the point film, I immediately draw back to The Hateful Eight. And that film, it has its moments that are funny, but they're so dark and they're not really punchline driven or situational driven.
It's not fun. This movie is a lot of fun.
Tarantino is his best when he balances the both of them. And And I think that's why I have my number one as my number one.
Okay. You want to move on to that?
I think so.
Okay. Well, number one, obviously the one movie I haven't mentioned yet is Inglourious Bastards. I know what your number one is. But
Mine's Django Unchained, and you knew that.
yeah.
I really thought you would have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at first, but I think you love that one the most, but it's not the best, like, well-made.
That's my logic, pretty much. Yeah.
I think Inglourious Bastards and Django Unchained are riding the same wave, though. They're taking a period of time in human history many of us can't believe happened, like, oh, slavery, or oh, Holocaust. And he's like punching them up in dramatic, humorous, and gory ways.
We are turning the oppressors into buffoons,
Correct.
pretty much.
And I think Tarantino having that view actually makes that history a little bit more digestible, because these people thought they were doing right, but in actuality, they're just as dumb as the dumbest person we know now, or as smart as the smartest person we know now. But they're like operating from a sense of superiority. Like, and when I think of Django Unchained, I think about the people that help run Candyland, like these redneck guys painting a birdhouse in a shack.
Yeah, no teeth having, can barely speak the fucking English language.
And you
type
have
motherfuckers.
Mr. Candy, this well-spoken, manipulative, statesman-like businessman, wealthy, but they're operating from the same moral compass. Same with Inglourious Bastards. You have, dude, Werner von Braun ended up, working for NASA and saved billions of lives, but killed millions. I mean, it's this weird balance. I think that's why they're probably the best Tarantino films, because they tackle these weird moments in history in a way that are deep in a lot of aspects, like drama, comedy, and then over-the-top violence.
This movie was the hardest to rank for me for some reason. It bounced between number 3 and number 5. It ended up being number 5 on my list. And that's not like a statement on its quality, because I think this movie is a whole lot of fucking fun.
Jamie Foxx delivers an amazing performance, as well as Christoph Waltz.
And Jamie Foxx is cool as can be. I actually prefer Christoph Waltz's character and performance in this movie more than Inglourious Bastards, because he has more screen time in this one. He's so charismatic and funny. The one detriment of this movie, I think I've told you this before, I think it's 30 minutes too long.
Yep, we've talked about this because we've watched this film together, and yeah, that last 30 minutes, you're kind of wore out.
Yeah,
because isn't it like 2.5 hours long?
I think so.
I mean, what ends up happening is that
it's Django being recaptured.
Yeah,
it kills the momentum for the movie.
Yeah, it does. That's a good way to put it. And I think you're not too bad for a black guy.
Yeah,
that's a fun way to try to save that momentum. Man, it really does put the brakes, as you built a lot of tension up into that point, and then you're cutting the line and you're trying to retie it to cut it again.
Yeah, and they kill the main villain before the brakes are hit. Like, DiCaprio's character is dead, and we're kind of re-entered into the storyline where Samuel L. Jackson is the one, the final boss, but he doesn't feel like he should be the final boss.
No, and Samuel L. Jackson's performance in this is fucking amazing.
This is his best performance ever, maybe.
They age him by 30 or 40 years somehow, and he completely molds into a hunchback, cane using old man. And he knows, well aware, what his role is to be and what he's supposed to parody and what he's supposed to make fun of, being a house slave. But yeah, that third act, I can see why you would put it a little lower. And I didn't view it that way. When I viewed it, I think of this is the movie I want to show people. And I think I enjoy it the most because I think it has the best balance. It's not cut into chapters. It's not experimental. But I think it wraps up a lot of my favorite moments of Tarantino's work into one film.
Yeah. And next to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, this is probably his second funniest movie as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the violence is hilarious. The KKK scene outside the wagon with
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill randomly appearing here. This is a great movie. I can't deny it. It being number 5 is not saying it's a bad movie. I've seen this more than any other Tarantino movie.
Same here. Maybe that's saying something, but hey, this is the film that we showed Dylan on a night. You know
that's
what I mean?
True.
And I think that's kind of what I was shooting for. I know Tarantino's supposed to make one more film, he says. What do you want to see him do next? I know what I want to say. We've had this discussion briefly once, but...
You know what? I don't know, actually. I don't want him to go too far outside what he's known for his final movie, if this is his final movie. You know what? I would actually like to see a return to like the crime stuff that he used to do in the 90s.
Okay.
I think like an all-star cast, a little bit more high-concept violence, but just like just some regular crime shit like Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs, I think would be a great way to cap off his career.
I think I would want to see that too. I'd mentioned to you before that I would like really enjoy seeing Tarantino tackle some sort of sci-fi theme, but I don't know if it'd be great for a final film. And I would want to see him tackle exactly what you said: crime drama, fun, over the top, violence, higher production value. Kind of go back to the roots a little bit more, but
there's like certain actors I like to see return again for a final movie. I like to see like Uma Thurman and Kurt Russell in his final film, like Harvey Keitel, of course, Samuel L. Jackson.
Maybe Pitt or DiCaprio.
Yeah. Kind of like a greatest hits. But knowing him, he probably won't do that.
He'd probably use the actors that we know and love today, like Anya Taylor-Joy or like...
Timothy like Chalamet or something. Like
Saoirse Ronan, Florence Pugh. Those are the number ones right now. I mean, the ones that we named off. God, dude, Timothy Chalamet, his career is fucking popping off. Mm-hmm. He's in everything now.
And Anya Taylor-Joy. They're both in so many things.
She fucking deserves it. She's a great actress. She's fucking awesome. She has like model face. I love her in everything. She was in that The Menu. We talked about that briefly.
I can't wait to see that movie.
She's in fucking everything. Yeah, man, we did it. We did Tarantino Ranked. I'm comfortable. I think we did a great job. I mean,
I had fun.
It's hard. It's so difficult, especially when you get into these last few. It's like, God, they're all good.
Yeah, it's not an easy ranking. You know, like when you like look at other people's rankings of Tarantino's movies, it could go any way. Mm-hmm. People could have Death Proof as number one. I've seen that. I've seen people have Jackie Brown as number one. Now, I don't agree with that, but he's done enough that's right in his career to where there's a great mix of everything in his movies that like people will approach them differently. I'm fine with that. As it stands, those are our two rankings for his filmography.
Hopefully next time we come back on a rank, we do like Nolan or something. I'd be very comfortable doing that. But yeah, man, we did it. I'm happy.
We did the thing.
We said we were going to do it. We did it, and then now it's done. Can you believe that? Yeah, but anyway, I think that's all we got tonight. We've done this plenty long.
It's hard to sign these off because we don't have like a recommendation, any of our typical shit.
I tell you what, next time you hear a bonus episode, we'll rank Nolan. How about that?
Okay.
You got some catching up to do. I've seen more than you.
This is true.
But until then, that's all I've got. Getter, if you could do me the honors twice tonight.
Adios.